When's the last time you thought about how your shop's design and branding is appearing to your customers? It's an important thing to revisit every now and then. In this episode of The Jam, our very own Jade takes us through some important steps to make sure your design is on point. Stick around.
I'm Lisa.
I'm Jade.
I'm Gordon.
I'm Richie, and this is The Jam with Team Marmalade. So what is Marmalade? Is it a set of tools? Is it a resource? Is it education? Yes. Yes, it is. It's all of this. Marmalade helps you grow your sales with real shopper keywords. We use machine learning to take the guesswork out of getting found on Etsy. So if you have an Etsy shop and you want your listings to be found first by shoppers, you want them to show up in the right places where shoppers have an opportunity to buy them, then you want Marmalade. You want the keywords we have, and you want the education and the community around Marmalade to help you get there. Now you can check out Marmalade at marmalade.com, and that is marmalead.com. See you there.
So, what are we talking about today, guys?
Well, today we're going to be talking about design and how that applies to your Etsy shop, what that looks like, and just kind of a few tips to make your shop have a really good flow and make it look really nice in general. You know, so often I think for me, what a shop really looks like really makes a huge difference, and it kind of dictates how long I'm going to stick around in it. If I enter a shop and the design is pretty bad and the pictures are blurry and it just feels disjointed because every single listing has got a different background or totally different props and it looks like there wasn't a whole lot of thought put in, I'm probably going to book it out of that shop pretty quick because it does not instill a lot of trust in me that the product is going to be super quality. And the opposite might be true. That shop owner may have an amazing product, but because of the design of the shop and the way it looks, I just am not going to believe that really. So
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I am in quite a few shops throughout a given day, and I would say that good design, good photography, it does build trust. It's not, you wouldn't walk into, a Target and their sign would be hanging off of the front, or maybe they just don't have a sign at all,
or the floors are really dirty.
The floors are dirty, or the shelves are empty. Those things matter. They matter, and they especially matter in an e-commerce setting. So I 100% agree that good design builds trust with your potential customer.
Yeah.
Now, when you say design about the shop too, and obviously we're talking about listing photos, it sounds like, but what are the other parts of design that, when you say a shop's design or a shop's look, what are the parts that go into that?
So, of course, the first thing that I'm going to look at is that header photo or the banner when you come in. If it's pixelated and blurry and it doesn't really seem to have anything to do with what's being sold or the rest of the shop, that immediately is going to catch my attention. And then the next thing I'm going to look at is the profile picture, to see if they do have a logo, how does that look? Is it pixelated? What's going on there? Does it go with the header photo, or is it a picture of their cat? And am I not really understanding then who the shop is even owned by?
I have seen an amazing amount of cat pictures, surprisingly. Yeah.
Or animal pictures in general. I love fur babies, but your shop is not the place.
It's only a very specific instance in which it is the place.
Yeah, unless you're selling, unless you're selling whatever.
Cats.
Cats or, dog collars or, then I can understand, of course you're going to do that. So unless it specifically has to do with your product and there's a picture that's really disjointed, that's not going to make any sense to me. And that's going to start sounding some warning bells. And then the other thing, overall in general that I'm going to look at is, how is the flow of the shop? How are the colors? Have they put some thought into that? Because that actually matters. Have you got a logo that's bright neon orange, and then kind of throughout your listing photos, you've gone with pastel pink or something that totally clashes? Because that, the flow of a shop really matters, starting from that header image all the way through. You can tell if somebody's really thought through their brand, because that's basically what this is. You have started a business, and this is your business, and this needs to have some thought behind it. And you can really tell between the shops that have thought that through and the ones that are just kind of throwing stuff up there.
The about section is another part.
Yeah,
I mean,
the about section.
It's not necessarily, what you might think of as design, but it's still very much a part of your brand. And telling your story.
Yep.
And, communicating with your customers. There's like a place for you to be able to put process photos or sort of like behind the scenes.
Yes.
And that is really important too. So those things I think are what we're talking about here when we're talking about, what design is inside your shop, what brand is inside your shop. And if the guys have anything to add, I don't know, did we cover most of what you guys think when you get into a shop too?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you're looking for those little cues, and we've talked about it before in other content, that when you're shopping online, you don't have the ability to walk in and look around, right? So you're looking for those little cues because people are so driven by fear. You're looking, and that's why Etsy is such a great place, is because they have all those protections to help make buyers feel confident. But even so, like even within that store, you're looking within the Etsy umbrella, you're still looking for those shops that make you feel safe, like you're going to have a good experience. Kind of like walking into a restaurant. You're picking up on things. You want to make sure does this place look clean? Does this place look organized? You just want to have a good time, and you're just trying to protect yourself. So all those things you talk about in a shop online, that's exactly how you convey trust.
Right.
Yeah, I love that you talk about it in terms of cues, because I think that is just very much on point, in that it may not be that you get into a shop and you're like, yeah, nope. But there are these little cues exactly where you're kind of like, well, this maybe not so much, but you're going to go, oh, maybe not so much here either. And I think those build up pretty quickly. And you're going to decide whether or not this is a brand or a shop that you're going to, build a relationship with. Possibly come back to in the future, or whether you're just going to keep going and looking for something else. So you do want to keep in mind that when you're doing this, you're writing your story, kind of, right?
Yeah, I'm always a little distrustful when I get into a shop and I'm like, is that a bath towel that's being used for the background?
Yeah.
Like,
what's
wait,
behind that bath
what
towel
is that?
I'm not seeing?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think that there are so many things that you can do, even if you feel like you don't have a professional setup at your home. There are so many things you can do that are like workarounds that make it look really professional. So I'm like, hey, you didn't think through this at all. And now I'm not sure about what you're selling. So
yeah, there's definitely, paper is a good alternative. You can get those rolls of paper for pretty cheap and stuff like that. So there are easy workarounds. There's definitely, we have written some articles about that in the past on our blog. There are definitely workarounds. But the important point here is that good design is important. Paying attention to it is important, because your brand is just one way, and it's a big way that you're visually communicating with your potential customers. And it's kind of a hook, so to speak, because if it's not there, if you don't have a solid brand, a solid design, then you're likely not going to see the amount of repeat customers that you might have otherwise.
And so, not to discourage people, because you don't have to start fancy. You don't have to start with, we all start somewhere. So you're not going to start today just getting started with where your stuff is going to look like, 10 years from now. That we all have to get started somewhere, and that's great. You don't have to start fancy. But just make sure the things you put out there exude trust. Make sure that, you're brilliant at the basics. And I think that's where people get themselves in trouble with that, is they try to get fancy with it, but then it looks kind of sloppy, because all this stuff takes time. So if you keep it simple, you get good and clean, I don't think anybody's going to be really upset about it. Kind of going back to the restaurant. It doesn't need to have the fanciest silverware. You walk in, you're looking for cues. This place is clean and I'm going to have a good time and it's safe in here. I'd rather have clean plastic forks than dirty fancy ones.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly. Do you want, a paper cup that's clean, or do you want a, fancy glass that has like fingerprints all over it and maybe, a little bit of other stuff? You're like, has this been washed? Yeah, some lipstick. And you're like, I don't know.
No, totally. And big bonus in this department, in the last few years, minimalism has become trendy. So simple, clean, it's on trend right now. And so you don't have to be complicated to be on trend. It doesn't need to be fancy to be on trend. So right now is the best time in a long time to really be able to capitalize on starting really simple and building your brand from there.
Well, and I think too, in general, if we're talking about design, like interior design or graphic design or whatever it is, minimalism is always a good bet in design. It's when you start trying to stuff so much into your design of your, whatever it is, your pictures, your logo, whatever, that you can get yourself into trouble really quickly and just overwhelm whoever's looking at it.
Speaking of getting yourself in trouble too, it's probably a good time to mention that if you're finding yourself looking at Etsy photos and you can't, like, you see one with a bath towel in it and you think that's totally fine, or you see another photo and it's like they all look fine. I don't see nothing. One of these doesn't look any better than another one to me. It might be a good clue that you need to involve someone else in your photo process, because there's no shame in that. Like, some people are just more adept at that than other people. You might be very good at the crafting that you're making, but you might not be an expert photographer or someone who's really strong in photography design. So it could be something that you might want to consider getting some help with that area of your shop. If you're having a hard time, looking at photos and saying, I don't see a difference here between these.
Yeah, that's so true, Gordon. And even if you are professional, like if you are a graphic designer and that's what you do for a living, or if you're a photographer and that's what you do for a living, even as a professional, you're going to want to bring somebody in and just get another opinion. I do that all the time with Lisa when I'm designing. I'm like, hey, how does this look? Do you like it? Does it make sense? Da, 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 da. So especially if you're not a professional and you're trying to learn a new craft, you definitely want to get another opinion, because it's hard as artists. And I'm saying this because I am one and I do it for a living. It is hard to separate yourself out and, put yourself on the outside of your art. You're always a little bit biased towards it. So if you can be the bigger person and bring somebody in, whether it's your products or the design of your shop or your logo or whatever it is, I mean, you're only going to get ahead of the game that way. And I mean, obviously doing that with somebody you trust.
Yeah, I mean, an ability to take a good, honest self-assessment on every front when you are in business and really in life is such a hugely crucial part of finding success. And so that is certainly applicable to design. Being able to look at your cover photo, your logo, the colors in your shop, all of that stuff. You got to look at it, and you can't just look at it from your own personal perspective, but from your potential shopper's perspective, and really ask yourself, is this going to work? If I were coming to my shop as a shopper, would this flow? Would it fly with these potential customers? Would it fly with a very small percentage of them? Is it likable to a larger percentage? Reaching out to people like Gordon and Jade were saying, you've got hundreds of threads and Facebook groups and social media groups and friends and family that would probably be happy to, say, yeah, this picture looks great, or no, I think you've got some improvement, a room for improvement here. And being able to listen to that feedback, very important.
Yeah, it really does. It makes a difference.
Let me jump in real quick to let you know that if you're enjoying this podcast, you should definitely check out our free 3-part mini-series about Etsy SEO. It's designed to take you from what is Etsy SEO to an example of an efficient Marmalade workflow. Check it out at marmalade.com/jam2020.
And then, also never copying what somebody else has done, but going and doing some research and finding some shops that you really like, especially if you're just starting out. And maybe if you aren't and you're like, oh my goodness, my shop needs a facelift, or I really need to up my game here with my header image or my shop icon or whatever it is, going and looking at some other Etsy shops that you really like and, making some notes, figuring out a list of things that you really like about that shop, and then taking that list and doing it in your own way. That's really going to help. Just doing research in general for whatever business you're in is always smart.
So we know that what your shop looks like matters. We know that it's a matter of building trust. It's about flow. But do you have any tips for making a decent cover photo or shop icon or anything like that? Or
I mean, practically some tips if you just don't know where to start is just to go get a free account with Canva, because Canva, it's canva.com, and it's a great tool to be able to jump into. They actually have pre-sized Facebook covers. I don't know if they specifically have an Etsy cover, but they have so many different templates. And it's a really quick Google search to figure out exactly what size you need of stuff. So it's a great way to be able to jump in and design something, or even just put an image in that you know is going to be sized correctly so that your cover photo, your shop icon isn't pixelated. You want to make sure that they size up and down really well. So Canva is a great tool to be able to use to ensure that that's going to happen and you're not going to end up with some grainy picture on either one of those places. And you'll be able to download that image as a high resolution image. And so that it's super helpful because you also obviously want high resolution for all the photos that you're using, because that's when you start to get grainy. So yeah, I mean that, and you can also in Canva, you can add in a color palette. So if you're wanting to really be consistent throughout your shop, I mean, I suggest using between 3 to 5 colors. I'm talking about like with props and just in general, like your backgrounds. You don't want to go crazy and use every color of the rainbow. Usually you want to keep it minimal, like you were saying earlier.
Yeah, I can see how using a ton of colors would. I've seen that in some shops before, actually, where it's almost aggressive.
Yeah, it can be jarring for your customer too. When you're like, oh,
word. Yeah. And some shops, rarely it works. Like there are some shops where that can kind of work, but a lot of times, when a shop kind of looks more like that really unified Instagram account, almost like
right,
yeah, where the photos sort of have a similar vibe to them. That does seem to be it's
a better flow in general.
Yeah,
so yeah, sure. It really, that makes a huge difference. And you can drop colors into Canva, or you can just, there's a color wheel in there and you can pick out several. And you know, that's also a very quick search on Google. There's tons of stuff about colors and how they work together. And so, you know, picking out a few, putting them in Canva, being able to use them is a great idea. And then, you know, again, like we said, it's really important with your listing photos to, you know, not overwhelm your customers with the props and backgrounds that you're using. Make sure they're not clashing with each other, and make sure that you're not putting so much in there that people are distracted from what your actual product is. Because I have run into that in Etsy shops before where I'm like, wait, what are they selling? Because there's so much in the image that I'm like, I'm not sure. Is it this thing over here? Or is it this? What is it?
Not just the people getting distracted. The algorithm will also get distracted by that. I'm sure Gordon and Richie can speak to this a little bit. But as Etsy's algorithm gets better and better at image recognition, you know, that kind of thing is going to become more important. You want to make sure that, especially for that main thumbnail, you're not clogging up your photo with a ton of, you know, with a really proppy picture where whatever you're selling is like among 5 other items that are there to sort of prop up the picture. Wouldn't you say that's true?
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I think being clear to a person is as important as being clear to a machine, and vice versa. Obviously, people are buying it, but as, you know, these artificial intelligences make their way into the mainstream, it's important. And it's one of those common things that, you know, like you said, you run into it yourself. And I have seen people across Facebook and whatnot, their comments are, yeah, I'm not sure what is being sold in this picture. That's some of their critiques for the image.
Yep, 100%. I see that pretty often as well, where somebody's just like, yeah, what are you selling? The other day I was looking at a photo and I really couldn't tell whether it was a glamour shot or whether it was accidentally uploaded. I think that the seller, they were holding a cooking utensil or something, and I think maybe it was supposed to be the utensil that was being sold. But I was like, what is it? Makeup? Is it jewelry? Is it what is happening?
Which item is it?
Yeah, so I know that it was I know it's important. It's important.
And you know, it's something that you just may not have thought of before. So if you haven't, that's okay. Just, you know, start making changes slowly, because that's all that really matters. Like, you don't need to feel bad. Just go and start making these changes, and you don't have to do it all at once. But, you know, maybe starting off with getting a good plan for your listing photos, because it is really important. Of course, you need people to understand what you're actually selling. That's really important. So just go and start making those changes. You know, write out a plan for some images that you want to get for your products, and you know, snap them on your iPhone. You don't need to go up and buy some kind of really fancy camera right away. You can definitely get some good images on your iPhone. They've come a long way, or whatever phone it is that you have. You know, start, like you said, start small. You don't have to have anything fancy right now. There are changes you can start making now that are really going to improve your shop as a whole.
So do you recommend, once you make these changes, that you just sort of, because I know with SEO, we're always saying you can't just like do it and then leave it alone for forever. So is branding similar to that?
Yeah,
so, do you just do it and then leave it alone for forever?
No. I mean, I would say that you want to get if we're talking about branding your shop and having a logo, yeah, you don't need to be changing your logo out every 6 months. That's not cool. I mean, you don't see Coke changing their logo out ever. They've had the same logo for so long. But a brand like Coke has been really good at keeping up with the times and keeping it modern. It's the same way, much smaller scale in your Etsy shop. You don't want to have photos that look super outdated. You want to stay on top of that kind of thing. Minimalism is in right now. So, maybe kind of going over more to that side is a good idea. It will appeal to a larger amount of people, I think, just because you're up with the times. But yeah, just like with SEO, you don't want to just leave stuff and never mix it up again. Especially like with your header photo, you can definitely switch that out often, unless you're just wanting to keep your logo in that image. But yeah, that's a really good place to grab attention and do it in a classy way, obviously. But you want to maybe think about switching it out for the seasons or the holidays. I mean, you can definitely do that with your header image.
If you're running a sale,
yeah, totally.
That's a great place to grab attention for that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. I think just again, kind of coming back around to the fact that you are actually writing a story with your brand and your shop, and there's something that you're really trying to communicate, and often that can be hard to figure out. So what I always recommend to clients in general is to sit down, make a list of why you do what you do and what adjectives come to mind when you think of yourself and your products. And then from there, it's always kind of amazing to me to see how design will naturally start coming out, because so often when you start to describe things, you start thinking of colors, you start thinking of images. And so it's really kind of cool how you can sit down and make a list and start thinking of those things. Your story and your brand will start to develop. That's something that I always suggest. And either way, knowing who you are and what you're passionate about, and why you're doing what you're doing on Etsy is a huge plus. And that's only going to help you in the process. And it's only going to help you connect with your customers more.
It's a piece of that authenticity that you're working to offer. Your brand is definitely a part of what's going to help you come across as an authentic, interested, invested seller.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I also just want to mention again that really try to stay away from any kind of sketchy profile pictures, because you can have a really well-designed shop and even have really good design throughout. And then if you have a super weird profile picture, it just is a little off-putting because you're the face behind the brand. So make sure that your profile picture is a good picture of you, that it's not in some really dark room, and that it just I've seen some before.
Or if it is, that's the vibe of your shop.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, if you've got a darker, moodier kind of creepy shop, then again, whatever it is, just make sure it goes with your shop.
Again, kind of feeding back into that authenticity. If you have a darker, moodier brand, then be authentic with that in your profile picture. If you don't, then don't have a profile picture that matches the rest. Not that your cat isn't an authentic piece of your life, but it probably, if your shop, like Jade was saying, isn't about cats, then maybe consider showing yourself to the world a little bit and getting your face out there as the head of your brand. And just be you, be real.
Yeah, be as authentic as you can be on Etsy, because your customers, they're coming to Etsy, and personally I come to Etsy because if I connect with a seller on Etsy through their shop and their story, I'm going to be more prone to go back to them as opposed to walking to a local shop, up the road, or going to Target, because certainly I don't go to Target because I'm connecting with the brand behind, or not the brand, but the face behind Target. I'm just going because, whatever. But I go to Etsy because I may have found a product I love, and more importantly, I have connected with that seller and I want to support them. And so it's really important that you connect with your buyers, and the fastest way to do that is to be authentic, have a shop that's put together well, and help them to see who you are, because if they're connected with you, they are definitely going to come back.